Hey everybody, Lars here. Time to do the first review video for the second unit. Forgive my voice. They think I'm coming down with a cold or I'm coming down with something. All this weather's been crazy and the clutch went out in my Jeep, so I was walking around taking trains without a car for a while, so I think a little bug may have gotten me. No matter though, I should live. I'm guessing I will. Unit 2's underway. You've had 3 or 4 days now to engage with the materials, so I want to start getting you some review videos so you see some of this stuff in action. Today, real quick, I already prepared some code for us. We're just going to run over strings and lists. So we'll look at some stuff with strings, we'll look at some stuff with lists, and then I want to look at some weirdness. Because Cheng Zi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Cheng Zi brought up some stuff in the forums about how indexing strings is weird in Python, and it is. And there's a couple of weird snafus that I want to show you. Some people would call them bugs. Some people would call them features. Anyway, let's take a look at this code real quick. There we go. And I did that. So I basically set up, and we're going to look at strings first. And I basically set up a string here, and then I did some things with it so we can see what it looks like. Actually, what I think I'm going to do first is I'm going to run this. And then I'm going to bring the code, the results up here so we can see it, and look at that. Life is so good. All right. The first thing I do is I define the variable myString with this long string. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Eliza Doolittle, I think. Rex Harrison, I think My Fair Lady. Anyway, it's just a long string. It's easy to use. And the first thing I do is I print the length of it. I can use the len function to see how long a string is. So, and it's a little tricky here, and I'm going to show you. You can see over here it reports that the length is 43. So that means there are 43 characters. Remember, we include spaces in this string. But when we start indexing, and we'll look down here when we start indexing, we start counting with 0. We're computer scientists. And you'll see later the advantages of it, and as you go more and more into information technology, you won't think twice about starting with 0, and you'll wonder why we don't start with 0 anytime. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, you start counting with 0, so because there are 43 characters, you're going to go from 0 to 42. So get used to that. Get used to thinking that way, because that's often the source of a lot of errors when people first begin programming. They don't realize, oh, yeah, that's right, there's 43 things, but it'll only go up to 42 because I started at 0. So just keep that in mind. But we see there are 43 items because we did a length and we printed it. But now, for the first time in our journey down Python Road, you're seeing indexing. You can go to the myString up here and say, I want to grab the 5th element. I would call it the 5th element of the string. So what do? You come up here and start counting at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th element is A, and what do we get over here? An A. So you get the 5th element starting counting at 0. Now, the second part here is a thing called slicing. And what you want to do is you're telling Python that I want to grab my string, but I want to grab it from the 5th element to the 15th element. But there's a catch here. When we do indexing with Python, and you're going to see this from now for years, as long as you use Python, when you give Python the beginning of a range in an index, it's the first thing you want. The first thing you're going to want to grab is that A right there. As you can see, you grab that A right there. You started at A. But that last part of your index is the first thing you don't want. It's exclusive. Inclusive on the left-hand side, exclusive on the right-hand side. You will get used to it, I promise. I know I'm throwing all these esoteric weird things at you. Start counting at 0. Second part of the range is exclusive, blah, blah, blah. Little weird at first, but you'll get used to it. These are Pythonic things. If you counted things out, you would find out that A is the 14th element, and the 15th is the first thing you didn't get when you did slicing. So get used to that. If you slice or you grab things in ranges, this item is the first thing you don't want. Okay? Now, an out-of-bounds error. Right now, there is no out-of-bounds error because I have it grabbing item 42. That starts at 0. That's 42, so everything is fine because I don't want it to explode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a 43, and I'm going to rerun this. Boom. And I get, let me get it up here so we can see it. And I get what is called an out-of-range error, okay? And what does it tell us? It says print my string 43, string index out of range, okay? All that simply means is that I took something with 42 items in it, and I asked for the 43rd item. And Python is saying, what are you doing? Dude, if you've only got 10 things, you can't ask for the 11th thing. You can't ask for things that don't belong there, okay? Now, when we're done with this video at the very end, I'm going to go back and we're going to look at some tricks about this because Chengzi brought up some interesting points, and I'm going to show you some bugaboos that have to do with strings. But for the time being, I just wanted to show you that out-of-bounds error. Now, if I go back and change it back to 42, I say Jackie Robinson, not Mariano Rivera, because I am a Met fan. So I am going to say, run it again, and now I'm back in beeswax. Let's put it right there. All right. Okay, so keep that in mind. Again, like I have 43. I run a length, and I see 43, and I say print my string 43. Any normal thinking person would think, okay, that's going to give me the last item of the list. That's going to give me the N in that long string. Not the case. You're going 1 over because you're 0 to 42. Okay? Real quick, with indexes, you do not just have to use hard-coded numbers, as we've been doing in this particular program. You can use arithmetic. You can also use variables. You can do a bunch of different things inside your indexes in case you want to use computation or you want to do an input statement and have the user suggest what part of a string to use. You can do things inside of the index. Okay? Here, my string 4 plus 5 would be 9. So what did it print? An I. Probably not the best example in the world because I grabbed 2 I's in a row. Oh, because they're both 9. It's the same thing. And I'm assuming it's that guy right there. Okay? So you can use simple arithmetic and variables within that. Now, the last thing we're going to do, and I don't want it to confuse you, is we're going to talk about string methods. You haven't learned what a function is yet. And a function, when it's used with a class, and you're going to learn about all these things coming up, but a function, when it's used with a class, is called a method. So you're going to learn that strings are this special type of data that has little commands or functions that we can run on it to make it do things. And I just wanted to introduce you to some of the more popular ones so you can see them run. Okay, here we go. So the first one is called uppercase, and it takes the entire string and puts it in uppercase. Now, remember this. You see my string dot and then upper, open paren, end paren. You're going to see that's how we call and use functions. But you don't have to worry about that now. Just worry about this simple stuff that I got on the screen. When I use upper, as you can see, it took my string and put it all in uppercase, right? But that is not a permanent change. It just prints it in uppercase for us. It does not change the string. Okay? You are going to learn in a second that we do not change strings. Strings are what are called immutable. If you want to make a change to a string, you don't change it. You grab the parts you want and create a brand new string. Because strings don't get changed in Python. Strings are what's called immutable. So, the second thing I do is I use the replace method. And I'm going to replace Spain with France. And as we can see in the second one, you know, it looked like it was just showing you it went back to lowercase again. But no, I took the Spain and I made it France. Okay? So that's how replace works. If I tell it what I'm looking for, and that, as you can see, that's a substring. That's just part of my bigger string. But if I give it a small substring and say replace that substring with that, that's what the replace method does with strings. Okay? Now, the very last one is called count. And count simply says count up all the ends in that string. So if you were to go down there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I didn't think I was going to count them all. And there you go, 6. So that's what it did. It counted all of those ends in the string. That could be helpful if you use strings later. I know I do video game stuff, as you guys know. So sometimes you'll take a string and you'll make that string represent 20 separate parameters. and you want to either turn those flags on or off with a 0 or an X sometimes. So I'll just count the X's sometimes. If I got 20 slots and I know I need more than 12 X's, I'll count the X's in a string if I'm using that small string as a marker and things like that. So it comes in handy. It's useful. All right. So these are the string methods. Again, as always, I'm taking this code and I'm throwing it in your resource folder. So don't think this is the last. Plus, this is YouTube. You can freeze it anytime you want. You can freeze it and start playing around with the code. I hope you do. But that said, this whole string list up high, I'm going to stick in your Unit 2 resource folder on Sakai. So you're going to have it. All right. Now, a bit of trickery. I'm going to Zotz this out. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to Zotz this out. We had a bit of confusion about this because I said that this is just like a comment. I was wrong. And as you can see, when you do comments with the number sign, you get it. It's red. Idle says this is a comment. When I do this, Python sees it as a long string. And technically, that's what it is, a long string. But if you just give Python a string, it says, okay, great, that's a string, and it doesn't do anything with it. And it's a common way that Python programmers comment things. Okay? But if you try to do something in the middle of it, okay, it will get looked at. It is considered. It is a string. The thing is I've always just used it to blot out code and not have it run as commands. So, but technically, if you try to do things in the middle of it, it would get seen, and you basically make sure that everything in between those three single quotes is just comments. Okay. That said, let's go to the list stuff that I prepared. Get rid of that one right there. All right, beautiful. So now if I save and I run, yes, I should just get my list stuff, and I did. All right, lists are different from strings in 2 ways. First, I'm going to show you how to build a list, and it's easy. All you do is create the variable, in this case, my list, open a bracket. It's a bracket, not a brace. And then you add the items that you want in your list. In this case, it's just 4 characters. I put them in single quotes. It's my name. So then when I print the list, as you can see down here, it doesn't print it like you would print a string. It prints it like a list. It's covered by brackets, and you get each individual item. Python sees this as a 1-character string. You see you have the single quotes on the other end, and you put that there. Now, like your string, lists can be referenced by their index, but we still start counting at 0. So if I say print my list 2, 0, 1, 2, it should print the R. And it does. Okay. Now, this is where we get A, the power of lists, and B, how it's different from strings. Lists are mutable. You can change them. Okay. You can keep the same variable name and it still points to this one list, but you can alter this list. You can make it bigger, smaller, take things out, put things in. Lists are what we call mutable. You can mutate them. You can change them. It's change. So that's a big difference, and it's big with lists because that's how we use them. So what I do in this example here is I say, all right, take my list of 2, my R, and reassign it. Make it a 7, okay? And you're probably saying a 7? That's a number. That's not even a letter. That's another thing about lists and strings. In lists, we can keep different types together, okay? In a string, it's just characters. It is just characters, okay? Alphanumeric characters. Or, if you use numbers, they'll be seen as words. They're not seen as numbers that you can use in math. Here, you see that I can put together integers, a floating point, strings. I can even, you'll see in the second example, add a list. So I can have a list of lists. You can use any kind of data type you want in a list. So what I do here is I say my list of 2, make it a 7, and then print it. And as you can see down here, it took that R and it made it a 7. So there, look, you got an integer sitting in the middle of that list of characters. Okay? So from my list 2, I create a list with a whole bunch of mixed data types, an integer, a float, a string, another integer. And look at this, my list, the first list that we created up here. So this list contains a list. And when I print list 2, you can see the way it's printed out. Okay? It just puts the list in the list. Okay? It's like Russian dolls. The very last thing I'm going to show you is that if you want to add to a list, you use a method, and that method is called append. So what I did here is I went to list 2, and I appended a string, and I just called it one more item. And then I reprinted it, and look at this. It's right there in our list. You get the original things, the list, and one more item at the end. So that's what you need to remember. Number one, know the list stuff, because we will use lists from now until the end of the course, and you will use them going forward in your Python programming life. They're incredibly important, incredibly useful, and you'll see for data science, when we clean data, first thing we're going to do, create a blank list, test our data to see if it meets some criteria. If it does, stick it in the list. Stick it in the list. You're going to see we use lists all the time. So, and this isn't hard stuff, so you'll be fine. You'll be in great shape. I'm not worried about that. But know this stuff, and know that lists are powerful because they're mutable and because we can keep any type of stuff in there we want. Later, and don't worry your head with it now, but later in Unit 5, when we learn about classes, when we learn about objects, you're going to really see how powerful lists are, because you can keep objects in lists. You can do anything in lists. Lists are the ultimate container. You know how you never have enough bookshelf space? That's what lists are. Lists are empty bookshelves just waiting for you to grab anytime you need it, which is awesome. I always need bookshelves. I can't have enough bookshelves. I got stacks of books that are just ugly sitting in front of other books, and that is a useless digression. All right. Now, you know about the string methods I wanted to tell you. You know about the list stuff. I'm going to do one more thing here. Actually, I'll zot out all the code, and I'll just come down here, and I will show you one of the things Chengzi was talking about. I'm going to create a string. Let's just call it string 4, and I will call it hello world, okay? Having programmed for 18,000 years, I know that is 11 characters long, all right? So if I want to, I can print string 4 index 11. What's going to happen when I do that? I'm going to print it. I'm going to go, and it blows up. Why? Because I start counting at 0, so I go 0 to 10. If I just make that a 10, it prints the D, which is the last item of the list. Okay? So if I print 10, I get the D. If I print 11, I get a big error. It tells me to go pound salt. Now, and I'll go show you something else in a second, but I'm going to show you this first. Let's say I wanted to print a range. Let's say instead of just saying print it, I wanted to print from 0 to 10. Okay? What does it print? It prints hello world, but it misses the D because 10 is the first thing we don't want. So what if I put 11? What's going to happen? It's going to print hello world. Okay, now that's interesting because 11, as far as an item, isn't there because it's 0 through 10. So you would think you'd get an out of range error, okay? But you don't, because 11 is the first thing you don't want. But I think the Python programmers, when they completed this, they put a one-time exception in range things so that you could go over the range for this reason. Because look, I could put 256 in there. Well, let me not try that. Let me try 25 first. I could put 25 in there, okay? And watch when I run it. Still gives me hello world. It lets me go insanely over the range when I print with ranges, okay? Let's try 256, hell. Fault tolerance. Still hello world. So I'm allowed to go way over range when I go the end of a range. Now, if I just tried to print 256, it's going to go haywire. It's going to say, whoa, no way, buddy. That's an overflow error. But the minute I tell it a range, it says, this guy must want the whole string. So that's a little bit of weirdness. I have a funny feeling. I know why. Because they put in that exception so that you could look at 11 when there's really only 10 items. But, well, you can look at index 11 when there's 11 things, and you should only get 0 through 10. That's what I meant to say. So that's a little weird. Now, let's look at some of the stuff that made Chengzi crazy. you can do a thing in Python called reverse indexing. So instead of saying this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, you can start at the other end of the string. And you can say D is -1, L is -2, R is -3. So when I say string of -1 and I print it, I get the D, because that's -1. If I say -2, I get the L, because that's sitting there right there for the L. So if I wanted to print from -2 to say -4, what do I get? I get nothing, because it doesn't like the way I go backwards. It says start at -2, so it starts at the L, and then it says go to -4. It wants to go forward. It doesn't want to go backwards. So it just prints a blank string. It says, nah, you're crazy. Now, if I said print from -4 to -2, look at that. We're okay all of a sudden. All right? So I think the problem that the problem that Chengzi had was it would be -11, -1. Is that it? Let's find out. Yes. He wanted to print hello world, but he wanted to do it with the reverse indexes. So he did that, and he saw the D was missing. So, being a good programmer, Chengzi said, all right, this is the first thing I don't want, so let's make it a 0. He made it a 0. He ran it, and he got nothing. He's like, what's going on here? Well, the minute you say it's a 0, you get that, oh, you're not going forward thing from Python, because it doesn't want you to it doesn't want a number in the beginning of the range that's less than the end of the range. So it blows up on you. Now, and that's weird. It's a bug. It's definitely a bug. Now, if I went back and I changed it back to -1, I'm back in business. So what I told him to do is use a thing called concatenation, put a plus sign here, and then just say string for -1 to get the last item. Because this is going to print from the beginning to the first thing you don't want, okay? So then you'll get up to the L, and then you just print the D by itself and add it to the end. What does this do? And then it works. So there's tricks and weird stuff you can always do with Python, but here I can't get to the end of the string, so I just grab the end of the string another way. So the example we had before, it lets you go haywire with ranges and overshoot it. Here, it doesn't let you go to the other end of the range, and I have to grab an individual item and put it in. So there is definitely a little bit of weirdness on the fringes, but for the most part, strings work pretty well with Python, and you have a rich library of methods that you're going to be able to use on your strings and your lists and all the things you have. All right? We're done. This is just, I know I probably went long. I always go long on these things. Announcements. Not announcements so much as giving you an idea that things are about to ramp up. If you're doing this and you're saying, variables, simple arithmetic, lists and strings, this is boring, this is rote, I get it, okay? We have to do the basics first. But the second half of your unit 2, and you've probably already engaged with some of it, is loops. And loops is one of the big concepts in learning computer programming, because it's not really looping, it's called iteration. And it's the thought that you can have a sequence. Strings and lists are sequences. Excuse me. And what you want to do sometimes is you want to perform an operation on everything in a sequence. And as you go through it, that's called iteration. And that's going to open up the world. And that's going to start making your programs useful. And that's going to start making things fun. You're going to see next week, I'm going to introduce you to a site called Project Euler. And we're going to solve a Project Euler problem. And you're going to see, just with the simple data stuff and the iteration that you have, after only 3 weeks of learning Python, we're going to be able to go to Project Euler and solve some actual real problems. So hold tight. The snowball is almost to the top of the hill, and we're going to start going downhill after that. And you're going to see it's going to be fun, and we're going to solve a lot of problems that way. Assignment 1. Half hour before I started shooting this video, I put assignment 1 up. It's called Cow Pie. Go take a look at it. It's not due until February 16th, which I believe is the end of this unit. So you have 10 days to consider it, work with it, have fun with it, okay? I will probably release assignment 2 Monday. I'm thinking Monday-ish, because tomorrow's Super Bowl, so I'm going to be busy. I also, on Monday, am going to release all of the information you need to begin working on your midterm project, where you have to go to the 3 different online Python resources and engage with them for about 2 hours each, and then write a small 4-page paper comparing and contrasting them, telling me what you thought were the good points, what you thought were the bad points about these 3 resources, and things along those lines. That's not due until March 4th, but I want to give you an entire month to work on it, so that maybe once a week you could do one of them, and then in the 4th week you could write the paper. All right? The paper's not a backbreaker. It's 2 pages, and then the magic of double spacing makes it 4 pages. All right? So it's not bad. All right? Don't freak out when you hear paper. Paper, people go running and screaming. Don't go running and screaming. It's fine. Okay? That said, last semester I had people give me bullet lists. I had people give me lists with pictures. No. It's a paper. Okay? It's got to be expository in nature. You got to tell me a story. All right? The reason we do this, so just because we're programming doesn't mean we don't have to know how to communicate. So that's an important part of information technology, to be able to communicate your ideas and talk about these things. So that's why we do the paper in the middle of the semester. Your grades are coming. I'm doing quizzes today. Eric is doing the assignments over the weekend. I want to get you these grades because I think you did great, and I want you to be geeked as you're looking at the loops and you're looking at the homeworks, because that's going to, you're going to realize, hey, I'm on a pretty good roller coaster here. I'm doing well. I want to keep it up. So I'm going to get you that. Project Euler stuff is coming. One last reminder is I set up the forum section for the Slavin TED Talk. Go watch the talk. Go and put in a paragraph to talk about whether you liked it, what you didn't like, what you were most impressed with. I've always liked it. I'll be honest. It's one of my favorite TED Talks. I think it's really super cool, super interesting. So go give that a look, okay? All right. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. If you're a football person, I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl tomorrow. It should be fun. It's a pretty evenly matched game. I mean, Denver has a decent defense, so that ought to slow down Carolina a little bit. Peyton Manning, this might be his last game ever, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play, so you can see if he can get a win in there. It's got a lot of different, stories and features. It should be decent. It should be a decent game. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to be in touch probably Monday when I give you the midterm assignment information, when I release assignment 2. Assignment 1's already out in the wild. Then next week I'm going to start doing the Project Euler and the second review video. The second review video is important. That's going to be the one about loops. So once you have looping down, then you're going to be like, okay, now I'm in Fat City. Now I can really start solving some problems. Okay? So we're underway. We're rocking and rolling right now, and things are good. So engage with those resources. Look at the assignments. Watch these videos. Keep moving with us, all right? Because things are going to get interesting very soon, and that's when you're going to smile and you're going to nod. You're going to be, okay, I get this. Now I get it. And you will get it. It's going to be cool. All right? You be good. And I will talk to you sometime on Monday, all right? Talk to you then. Bye-bye.